Well, let's cross live to the capital of the United States, Washington, where François Picard, France 24's François Picard, is standing by for us. So, François, just a few hours to go now until the first polling stations close.
Yeah, and I can tell you that the lines across the U.S. and battleground states are long, 2 hours plus in many places. So people understand what's at stake. I'm haunted by something we heard in that report about how each one of those elections seems more polarized than the one before. We're joined by William Lawrence, who's a professor at American University, former U.S. diplomat. Thanks for being with us here on France 24.
It's a pleasure to be here.
That sense of it just seems more and more and more polarized. Is that your sense?
Absolutely. And like everywhere in the world, it's also driven by false information, manipulation from foreign countries. You know, Russia's actively involved right now, and it'll get worse in the coming days with providing misinformation to American voters through social media about not believing the results. You know, and Americans are very polarized. I think, like everywhere too, COVID left everyone in their houses spending too much time on the internet, you know, getting radicalized. And that led to a lot of what we saw in the latter Trump administration and into the Biden administration and around the world. So we're in tough times. If you look historically, often after pandemics, plagues and stuff, societies have time, you know, adjusting and getting back to normal. I think we're still in the post-pandemic craziness.
Even though it's an issue that's not at all talked about or very little talked about by the candidates themselves.
No, they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but it's a big deal. It's the cause of the inflation, which is probably the most important issue for Americans and again around the world. But it touched all the other issues as well. I mean, the border is a big issue for a lot of Americans, but those flows go up and down based on a lot of post-pandemic variables and went down during the pandemic. And then Trump claims I controlled the border when in fact the pandemic controlled the border more than Trump did. So all of this is way more pandemic related than either party wants to acknowledge.
Right. And, you know, we have bitter divisions in Europe as well, in a lot of places. But for the United States, this really feels uncharted. It's something that's hard to put our fingers on. Right now, overall, it's been a quiet election day with a few little snafus here and there. But things have gone off fine so far.
Yeah, I think there's more anxiety than actual problems. There were some drop boxes blown up before the election. A lot of businesses downtown are boarded up right now because they're flashing back to January 6th. And I keep telling people you don't have to board them up before we even have a result, you know. But the Proud Boys are around, the Antifa people.
So you're worried?
Yeah, I'm worried about violence like January 6th, not right away, but it could happen again. And Trump has already said he's not going to accept the election result if it doesn't go his way.
And what do the Democrats do if he does that? What should they do? What should they do differently from last time?
Well, luckily, they put a lot of laws in place. Even in Congress, there's some new laws to help make it harder to challenge the election or to present fake electors, as Trump did. The Republican Party is already preparing fake electors like they did in 2020, and so there's already actions being moved against that. There are a lot more lawyers involved this time against all of the lawsuits that the Republicans are already filing now. And there's also a lot of media and social media strategies that are way more sophisticated, even anti-AI, artificial intelligence strategies, because we're hearing there's going to be a lot of fake AI coming out after the election, questioning the election results.
It's become more sophisticated in micro-targeting. It's become more sophisticated as well in trying to gauge different communities. You were telling us your remit, North Africa, the Arab world, the Middle East. And you're seeing divisions and subdivisions without going into the weeds on all of that. We know, for instance, let's speak concretely here, there's a key battleground state, which is Michigan, home to a big Palestinian-American population. How does Kamala Harris win Michigan if Palestinian Americans are furious at the Biden administration and stay home?
By finding voters other than the Palestinian community. There's been a big push in recent weeks to stop badgering Palestinians to a large degree and Arab and Muslim voters to a lesser degree into voting for Harris when they're so angry about what's happening in the Middle East. There are people who've lost 80 family members, who are being approached and their doors knocked on, and it's just really, really raw nerves and a lot of anger right now. But there, for example, in Michigan, there are 2 million people that don't vote. So there's a lot of people that can be encouraged to vote from those communities that have nothing to do with the Middle East or Arab and Muslim diasporas that can be approached and convinced to vote. So, and in a lot of states, you can vote with same-day registration. You just vote provisionally. So those votes can be made up in other ways. Also, a lot of Jewish voters, are sticking with Harris because they don't like Trump. Whereas, even just a few months ago, it looked like Trump was going to do really well with the Jewish vote. Doesn't look like he's going to do as well as he thought he was. And young Jewish voters can be brought around. And I think part of the outreach to young Jewish voters is, Kamala Harris is going to shift, if not totally change the policy and push for a ceasefire, et cetera, after the elections.
After the elections, when the Abraham Accords were those deals where many states in the Arab world recognized Israel, there was this kind of idea, all right, let's just we're not going to solve the Palestinian issue now, let's just normalize things. It came back to haunt the Middle East to a degree. But how do Arab Americans feel looking back on it now at the Abraham Accords in view of what's happened in the past year in Gaza, in Lebanon? Is that a point in Trump's favor or against him?
Arab Americans, like myself, never supported the Abraham Accords because of what was being sacrificed to get the Abraham Accords, just like I was against the JCPOA, not because it wasn't a good idea. But
the Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah, but because so many Syrians were being killed and we were looking the other way because we wanted the JCPOA almost at the expense of Syrian lives. And so that's why I was against it at that time. But I really believe that we can... we can definitely have at this time refocusing on Palestinians. It's going to have to happen. Saudis will be leading the way. Whatever you think of Saudi Arabia, they're going to lead the way, against more Abraham-type accords. And a lot of the Arab Muslim world is going to follow the Saudis in saying if there's not a clear pathway to a state, no more Abraham Accords. And they could unravel. There's already talk that the Emiratis might back out or make some changes to their agreement if things don't get better in the Middle East. The Bahrainis are a little less unhappy. The Moroccans are happy because of the recognition. Arab Americans just never liked the Abraham Accords at all, and they just see it as a part of the problem with Trump.
Right. And we'll have to leave it there. Unfortunately, William Lawrence, we could talk for hours, but there's an election to be decided. The vote counting here in Washington, just for a reminder to viewers, it finishes, I believe, in your state of Maryland, I know it's the same hours. Is it 7 or 8 p.m.?
8 p.m. Some returns will start coming in at 7 and through the evening.
Okay. Yinko Yatadi will be here throughout.
We'll be watching very closely. François Picard, thank you so much for that.